Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we're going to continue our musical march themed reservoir of films. Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about how destitute this film we're going to talk about is?
So we are continuing our discussion of Mad Max with the film Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, the 1985 classic by George Miller and George Ogilvy. So, of course, starring Mel Gibson. This is an interesting film that takes place
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, what the hell?
There's always a
You
problem.
just get abducted by fucking aliens?
Am I not
You weren't
speaking?
You cut out for a minute.
Yeah.
That's strange. Okay, well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear you now?
Okay, well, this is again the Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and this particular film takes place roughly 15 years after the second film, Road Warrior, with Mad Max again, the rogue, wandering the deserts and the wastelands. This time after a nuclear holocaust has destroyed civilization. He comes upon, after getting stuff stolen from him, he comes upon a strange civilization where they have found their own brand of justice.
All right, let's be real here. He gets dive bombed off of his camel cart, which is telling him, like, did he become that dude from the beginning of Aladdin, where he's like, it also does fries? I don't know, but I like to think that that's what he was doing for a while with his fly swatter that he holds on to for an extremely long period in the film.
Mo, is this your first time watching this film?
No, dude. I think for me and you, man, Thunderdome was like our childhood flick. You know, like this was just the movie that I watched a ton as a little kid. I think it was probably the first Mad Max movie that I saw, and so I just watched it a lot at my uncle's house. And then eventually he was like, "Yeah, there's other ones," and he showed me, you know, a couple years later, Road Warrior and Mad Max, and I thought Road Warrior was cool. Thought Mad Max pretty much sucked all the dick in the world, and just ignored them mostly until high school when I started watching Road Warrior a lot. But Thunderdome is like a childhood classic for me. It's definitely my go-to movie for Mad Max, you know. And obviously, based on the fact that you suggested it, I would assume it's yours too.
Most definitely. Dave, was this your first time?
I guess you would call this, in a sense, my first time of seeing it entirely. Because, once again, I watched many of these, like, in pieces on television while they were on TNT or something like that. It's just, this is the first time I've watched it in its entirety. So, I guess, in a sense, it was like seeing it anew. So maybe piecing it together was kind of an interesting perspective. I thought it was kind of like it was different for a Mad Max movie. That's for sure. So I mean, it's as different as the other two, and to me, it kind of had a Peter Pan kind of a vibe going on for a moment, you know.
Yeah, it felt kind of like Hook, didn't it? At least aesthetically sometimes, right?
In fact, I almost think that Hook came after this, right?
Yes.
So I almost think that Hook kind of took that moment in Mad Max and just built on it for the Lost Boys scene.
Well, I mean, you could argue the Lost Boys existed well before Mad Max, so
Yeah.
True.
maybe they just let it influence their style that they took with it.
Well, what you didn't know is that Miller actually this is not his idea. He originally found ancient texts talking about a lone road warrior in the desert.
What?
Yeah, the same text that led William Golding to write Lord of the Flies. Yeah.
So Jake, was
Okay.
this
Which
your
actually
first
he has
time-
cited Lord of the Flies. What's that?
Is this your first time watching, Jake?
I cannot swear to it, but I think it was. I think it's very likely I saw bits and pieces when I was much younger, but I have no recollection of them. It was basically a first time watch, and
I know I
overall,
played the soundtrack for you.
oh, probably, but I don't. That doesn't mean much. I probably heard the songs a couple of times, but that doesn't really mean much.
Yeah, I had like an uncle that would blast this shit to wake us up when we were like 80s music in general, to wake us up when we were like sleeping over at his house. And ironically, it's the same fucking uncle that would always show me this shit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, my first impression was that it was. I liked it. Honestly, like I think I said in our previous discussion on these movies, I think you said, Brandon, that you thought the Fury Road was almost a parody of the series. I almost felt more that Thunderdome got a little bit into that territory. It's definitely a different vibe.
Crazier.
And part of that is because I know George Miller was not the sole director here. So that was a big part of it.
It turns out that Byron, I forget
Right.
his last name, but the longtime producer of the series had died location scouting for Thunderdome. So he'd been with them the previous two movies, and this dude died, and like he was apparently a good friend of the director. So that's why he brought in a friend that he could trust to help him co-direct it, because he knew that he couldn't do it while he was like mourning and shit.
So basically, Miller handled the action scenes, and George Ogilvy did the rest of it. But Miller had come up with the idea of a sort of Lord of the Flies influence thing, and someone else said, "Oh, you should put Max in there as the one that rescues them," and so that's where that all came into be, I guess.
Cargo
I definitely got a Lost Boys vibe from much of that scene.
Yes.
I think Hook was kind of in my mind a little bit.
Yeah, there was huge criticism of that, I guess, at the time too, because like their shit felt too derivative of the Lost Boys or something like that.
Right, something like that. But yeah, overall, it was interesting.
What year did this come out?
85.
87, 85. Fucking there you go. The cargo cult idea, though, I don't think honestly, I became aware of the idea of cargo cults right now, looking this up to fucking like
Hook,
not right now, but like in the last couple
They talk
of
about
weeks.
them a lot in philosophy.
Yeah, well, and it's a thing, like, okay, as a casual person that's not studying philosophy, I heard about like the cults or like the tribes that worship like some random British person, like I had heard about that shit, but I didn't understand that it was like an actual thing
Some
that happens,
random British
like
person.
fairly frequently. So the idea of a cargo cult is what really drove me in this viewing of this when I was like watching it, obviously, and looking it up. And that's totally what those kids are. They think there's going to be like some captain that comes from nowhere to spirit them away to this location.
Captain Walker.
It's wild. I'm sure we'll get to that, but I thought that was pretty crazy.
Captain Walker of the Wikiway.
So, Dustin, is this your first time seeing this?
I'd seen it once before when I first kind of got into Mad Max. I didn't actually know what Mad Max was for a long time, so I just kind of threw it in with the horror movies. And I kind of refer to this as like the crazy one, because the Mad Max series gets really weird really quick.
Well,
what the fuck is going on?
Well,
But anyway, so like I watched them in order the first time I saw them, and so Mad Max was like, okay, this is a pretty good movie. And then in Road Warrior, it's like, wow, things are really going downhill in this world. And then, but then we get to Thunderdome, it's just like, what is happening? Everything has gone mad.
does it help if you knew between Road Warrior and Thunderdome there was a nuclear apocalypse directly after Road Warrior, and then another 15 years that separated it from Thunderdome time-wise?
Which
So-
What?
Yeah.
How much time?
Actually, 15 years.
Oh,
So-
okay. So that's the timeline, isn't it? It's like
Yeah. So,
So
yeah,
it's
it's
kind
Road
of a
Warrior.
dystopia. It's a dystopia, and then
Yeah.
it becomes like more of a dystopia, and then the bombs actually drop between 2 and 3.
Yeah, the way that it goes, and if y'all are interested in more in this, the Mad Max Bible, which hopefully Dave will put a link to that in the description below, because they do a very good job of explaining it better than I could. But essentially, Mad Max is the parallel between the oil crisis between Saudi Arabia and Iran, if it went south. So it's more of a relative tale to reality, only taking place like briefly in the future.
yeah.
And then
It's
4
building
years
up to
after, yeah, the 4 years after that, people are fleeing the cities because they're becoming more dangerous because of shortages, and they're going into the wasteland, which brings us the Road Warrior, and of course Max having lost everything, he just loses himself in the wasteland.
I think
and
it's kind of cool and quirky that you go from gas to methane gas of pigs.
Well, his whole thing in the shit was originally was that, like, you know, Miller was fascinated with the idea of what like people would do to keep mobile, you know, which is probably true. If this coronavirus shit shut down, like people being able to go get gas tomorrow, I think you'd see a lot of people take to the roads with guns and start taking gas, you know, and moving around.
Is that exactly? I mean, it wouldn't take that long. I think I shared a meme like, it's like, so how long before this happens? And it has the clip.
Humongous
The thing from
Mark
like
II.
Well, think about that. That's one of your first real freedoms, like your first real global freedoms is being able to move like at your own pace, you know? So like once cars were invented, that took away the fucking wagon train bullshit, you know? Which is what makes the wagon train bullshit in Road Warrior so enticing, you know, because it's like we're kind of past this, but we can still do this and make it interesting, you know. You know, your real freedom in the world is being able to go where you want, right?
Yep.
Like that's true. And George Miller had that fucking locked down with that first Mad Max, where he's like, imagine if people had that taken away from him. And even thinking about it right now, like honestly, I think the people's ability to move around would be the thing that they would bring out the guns to fight about, you know?
Yep.
Not vice versa. Like,
but you'd think that dystopian government would probably take the guns away too, along with your freedom.
Well, apparently what they're going to do is just leave a bunch of sawed-off shotguns with duds lying around. It's pretty much going to be the case, but the point remains the same, you know. Like I think there is something in that Mad Max shit that makes us like it. That is about that like ability to move around. You know, he had it fucking dialed in like right away, even though he didn't have the post-apocalyptic stuff quite like figured out.
Well,
he knew that eventually he wanted to do this story about people that were like isolated, you know.
Yeah, he was against even using atomic weapons up until this point. He wanted it to be firmly grounded in reality. It wasn't until after they got to the storyline that he was willing to go ahead and let it go.
Mhm.
But
Right.
even then, he had to have it further in the future so that if he wanted to return to that well of prior to or just after the bombs blew up, he
Mhm.
could.
Which he kind of did, I think.
Yeah. So
Yeah, Fury Road has to take place after this, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you have guys called Fallout War Boys if you're super removed from the apocalypse, you know.
in theory, the original script for Fury Road was to take place 30 years after Thunderdome. But but it's a reboot, so theoretically all the events happen, but happen like in close succession to one another.
Or
And,
you could look at it the way I do, which is that if you really wanted to look at it as fit into the chronology of it, it's directly after Road Warrior, before Thunderdome. You know,
but you could easily fit it there.
that's the way I look at it. If I had to put it into the timeline, it's post Road Warrior, pre Thunderdome. Really, though, it's just a fun reboot. I don't even know if you call it a reboot because it's not really trying. Well, but it's hard to say that with the Mad Max.
What do you call a soft reboot?
It's
there
a
you go.
In the same sense of the new Halloween film is being rebooted.
Yeah. It's not necessarily saying like screaming, "Let's make sequels." It's just here's this thing that's fucking awesome. Yeah.
But
I have an idea.
My original viewing of this was long ago. My father used to play the soundtrack of this in his car on cassette a lot when I was very young. He loved this film a lot. I remember seeing it for the first time probably around age 7 or 8. And I watched it many, many times. I think I've probably seen this film probably 40, 50 times.
Damn.
And I've heard the soundtrack more than that. So I have that pretty well memorized. And the soundtrack to it, to me, is particularly powerful, which is why I put it up. And we'll talk about the soundtrack, of course, when we get to it. But that's my reason for putting it up.
I love the beginning song that Tina Turner sings in the very beginning. She's always had a strong, powerful voice. Just when she was married to Ike is when things kind of went sour. But I think that was after Beyond Thunderdome, when she had the strained relationship with him.
Fuck, dude, she's still making Thunderdome money, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start with the plot. Of course, Mad Max. I'm just going to try and do it in big chunks so we can move through quicker.
Yep.
So Max gets kind of raided, as he seems to do in these movies, because he can't seem to keep his vehicle, except for the first film for some reason. And he gets basically dive bombed by this guy in this airplane, who my guess is a relative of the guy he was harassing in the second film. Then, to get his stuff back, he tracks the guy to this place called Bartertown, where he makes this. Oh, by the way, spoiler alert for future information. Tracks us to this place called Bartertown, where you pretty much can trade for anything. It's all about making deals. It's a kind of mockery on modern day civilization. So, kind of like the Purge before the Purge in a way.
Well, I was getting kind of a Hannibal vibe with the pigs.
Yeah, definitely there. But he ends up making a deal with Auntie, who rules there, to take on this this other person, because it's a kind of a two-power faction. Her and Master Blaster, and Master Blaster runs the methane factories below the city that produce the power.
Also
Yeah, he gets involved in your stereotypical samurai fucking device right here, which is where he's the guy that comes into town that gets hired to take out another person that's prominent in the town by another person that's prominent in the town. Only he can't do it in a way that's fucking ridiculous. So he has to challenge them to a fair duel.
So
100% samurai movie shit. You know.
So, kind of a fun thing. There's a character in Mortal Kombat 10, Therator, and they're like Master Blaster.
Nice.
Oh, yes.
The unique thing about Master Blaster is they're actually two people. So Master is this little person who rides on Blaster's back, and Blaster is this like 8-foot tall monster of a dude.
Mm-hmm.
Which is amazing, but if you take away all of that fucking shit from it, it's a samurai movie plot, you know.
Oh yeah. So, what did y'all think of the concept of Bartertown as a general? We haven't even gotten to Thunderdome yet.
Oh, no,
I figure we can hit that next.
I've been to Megaton. I get it.
Bartertown kind of reminds me of like Dungeons and Dragons and their thieves world kind of thing. You know, where it's this town that's just based on bartering, trading anything for anything.
It's their Mos Eisley, dude. It's a wretched hive of scum and villainy.
It's entertaining when he's asking for the weaponry when he makes the deal at the front. They've even got a guy screening him. You can't even enter unless you got a deal worth entering for.
But notice how there are laws in this town. So
how many times has that been fucking parodied too? That fucking scene in Thunderdome where he's putting all his weapons up. And I'm sure that was a parody of like earlier scenes too. So it's like,
there's got to be a Western. There's got to be.
It has to be, yeah. You know exactly what I'm saying, Brandon. Like there has to be like an origin story for that.
Oh, there's got to be on that. But it's just really cool seeing all the general things. You've got the auctions going on, the Atomic Cafes, a lot of stuff moving. There's a lot of moving parts.
There's motherfuckers in the line trying to sell like water that's he hits it with the Geiger counter and it's like fucking not the water you want to be buying in line. Yeah.
What's a little Fallout?
Like, only so and so % irradiated. Yeah, I've played this game.
What's a little Fallout? Like you said.
Or when he's selling the camels, talking about the suspension and the
right. I did rather like the guy that was the screener, like for the town, like the way he was just all business or whatever, and he seemed like, you know, just kind of this chubby old dude, but then when he actually had to fight, you know, could hold his own. I was like, that was kind of fun. But and I like the part where they made Max give up his weapons, and he's just so many weapons. And it reminded me of the scene in Kino's Journey where Kino had to give up her weapons. And it just, I love that scene so much. It would just, it's to the point of absurdity, but it's, on the other hand, in this particular setting, it makes sense. They still
gotta have weapons.
He still gets one by them with that little fly swatter. That was fun. But
always let a man keep his fly swatter.
Well, yeah. Especially if you're going to a place run by pig shit.
That's one thing I will connect to Waterworld right now. Is it felt like the people living down in the pig shit definitely was like an inspiration on the dude living down in the oil.
Oh, yeah.
Waterworld.
Mad Max is that. Actually, I would not be surprised if Mad Max was a direct influence on that and The Postman.
Oh, it totally is, dude.
Especially that.
If they don't admit it, they're fucking jabronis.
Yeah, that one I want to see.
Oh, the Post one is just wild.
Postman rules.
Bad, but it's wild.
That was one of my favorite. It's not bad. Postman just didn't do good. That's the difference between being a good movie and a bad movie.
I can't think of that without thinking about that cracked meme that they did, or the photoplasty they did of the the dude walking through the barren wasteland, and it was Cliff Clavin, and it was just
I'll just say this: the Postman equally deserves the respect I think that stuff like Mad Max gets, and equally destroys the Waterworld is like in terms of being a post-apocalyptic movie. The Postman was good. Waterworld's fun, but Waterworld is not great.
Well, don't get me wrong. When I say bad movie, I mean it in a good bad movie way. So I mean it with all the best respect. It's just
Postman was not. I don't think the Postman was a bad movie. I think the Postman was a movie that came out and unfortunately stacked against some shit it couldn't handle, and it was maybe ahead of its time. Yeah. The Postman, if you released it today, I think would do a lot better.
Or shoot, if the Postman had released 10 years earlier.
There you go.
I mean, I didn't know anything about Waterworld for a long time, other than people would like pan it very viciously.
Yeah.
yes.
Extremely viciously. And I grew up.
Barely.
Waterworld was like a new movie at one point.
Well, it ended up on as an Arrow release, which
kind of dope.
what the fuck?
I have it.
Yeah, I have it too. But that's I have Well, I know. I was always told. I guess the point of my story is I was always told Waterworld was like a terrible movie, but it sounds like I was given bad information.
Yes,
and so I could probably watch it at some point this week.
It's not a
To compliment Mad
Dude,
Max.
you totally need to watch Waterworld. I wish I'd known about this sooner. I'd have set this up for you to get on the podcast with me over there. But damn, dude, Waterworld is such not the movie people fucking try to make it out to be.
Maybe it'll come up with these things.
If people like the Mad Max series, they'd like Waterworld and the Postman.
Waterworld were fucking hardcore fanboys of Mad Max.
I feel like I was maybe, as a little kid, and I still loved Waterworld. I thought it was fucking awesome. But I was also like 8. It's I can't really say that I had the best intentions in mind. I was just like, give me more of that shit. Thank God there's this like water movie.
I think a big part of what sunk that one was that Kevin Costner was such a huge star at the time, and people were like, why in the hell did you make this?
They did the same thing with Postman though too, and that movie was also pretty goddamn good if you actually watched it. It was
I think it was a different crowd than what he was aimed at with the crowd he was originally going for.
Yeah, I think Costner was like us. He was like an old sci-fi nerd or some shit and wanted to make something that was fucking actually cool. And people were like, why aren't you just playing a dude that makes friends with Indians or something? And then that's where it is.
So as far as this goes with Mad Max, when we get in here, we of course meet Auntie as our main antagonist, and I really use that term loosely because I don't consider many of the characters in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and I really don't consider most of the people in Bartertown as much evil as they are neutral. They're just kind of
do anything
neutral. Wrong. They are all about their laws and working within it. They may be, because even Auntie knows how to play by the book.
Yeah, well, when they fucking pull the shit out from underneath them and start blowing up the entire city,
and
maybe it gets a little different.
She's played by Tina Turner, and I have to say, despite everything, she gives a pretty impressive performance as a character in this.
Oh, she was into it. Yeah.
I really loved the character. Matter of fact, to me, she was the one that shined the most as far as the characters are concerned. What did y'all think of this character?
I would have wholeheartedly agreed, dude. That was something, maybe it was because of my uncle and their 80s music as a kid, but Tina Turner going into it was always a highlight for me.
She did a good job, definitely. Very good job.
It didn't feel like a celebrity being just inserted into it. It felt like she actually embraced the role.
It also didn't seem like she was just in there for the sex symbolism either.
That's what I'm saying. Like she was into it, dude. And you can tell in later sequences with her that she was like about it.
Granted, she did kind of end up being kind of a sex symbol, but shit.
Yeah, she was about that Mad Max shit. Whether she was actually there for most of it or not, you know.
I like
the points where they had Tina Turner in there, she fucking did exactly what you'd want her to do.
Right.
You know?
I mean, I love the line that she was saying at the end. It's like, "Ain't we a pair, Raggedy Man?" And
Yeah, I
walks
love
off.
all of her exchange with Mel Gibson. It's so great.
It's interesting that this is probably her most significant acting role. She only has a handful.
Destiny, man.
But it's and actually this is a theme that I'm thinking about putting forward at some point is musicians who take on major acting roles. And
Madonna.
We have Labyrinth covered.
some of them are much better than Madonna. Although Madonna's had some notable roles. And yes, Labyrinth is not Bowie's only significant role. He's had a couple of really
no.
I feel like there's better ones,
Yeah.
like insanely better ones.
Like I think it was The Prestige that I thought he was really impressive in.
If you want old sci-fi, you got a man who fell to
I'm just
earth.
talking in general, dude, like musicians that have acted.
Well, yeah, there have been, but and some of the ones who were considered for that movie as well. But like Sting and Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I mean, it's a good one there. But yeah, overall there were some interesting portrayals in here. The one dude I was thinking of was played by Frank Thring, the veteran Australian actor. Yes, Bruce Spence is the one who returns as Jedediah the pilot. And actually, this one, apparently the kid who plays his son, I think got out of acting, and I think I read he became like a club designer or something, and a DJ who actually frequently uses a remix of the theme song from this.
Nice.
Well, the one that played the feral kid with the boomerang from Road Warrior became a jeweler. So hey,
did we really touch on like the kids in this movie?
Well,
we're gonna get to it.
To me, they seem to kind of come out of nowhere. But I think we've already sort of talked about like the Lost Boys kind of vibe that we get.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Sorry, Jake. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's all right.
Just wanted to make sure that we hadn't glossed over this because this shit's important.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there. We haven't finished. We haven't finished the first part yet, where we're gonna get into the namesake, the Thunderdome, because of course Max takes up the deal, but he's got to keep it secret because this is some Games of Thrones type crap. Because Master Blaster is basically flaunting his power, saying, "Look, dude, I run the show here, and if you try and show me some lip, I'm going to shut down all the power." There will be no more
methane.
So she's like, "Okay, we can't have this, but we need Master's brains because he's the one who understands how all this power stuff works." So basically, they send Max down there. He scouts it out. Says, "Yeah, that's cool. I'll make the deal. We'll make sure that I'm equipped as good as I was before I got in here, and I'll do the deed." So he has to pick a fight with them because they have this concept of Thunderdome, where two people who have a dispute, they go in, they fight each other, and
two men enter, one man leaves.
Exactly.
The classic.
So dispute handled. Their way of saying, no more wars. You got a dispute, you handle it in here, you fight it out, and everybody gets to get the entertainment out of it.
And there are no rules. So,
and it just so happens that that Master Blaster bought the vehicle that was stolen from Max. So Max had the perfect reason to pick a fight with him. and manages to
You have my car.
to Thunderdome, which leads to an epic fight between Max and Blaster, where Max earlier on manages in his scouting to figure out Blaster's one weakness, which we'll pick up at. So, what did you all think of that?
Well, I'll mention real quick back to the fact they had his car. I like that scene with that dude trying to disarm the bomb on it, and he's like so close, and then like he explains the whole process, and then he like Max is like, oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you. He's like, I would know. It's my car. It's like, but that guy, that mechanic or whatever he was, he amused me in his brief appearance. See,
Yeah.
I think that this kind of confrontation that they have originally was like, it's my vehicle. It's like, yeah, brain broken, him pedestrian.
You will disarm. No, I will not.
Actually, I believe, isn't that like the only time in the movie where he introduces himself or says his name? It's like he's fighting with him and he's like, me, Max.
Yeah.
He does it in that weird broken language the guy uses.
Which technically, if you break it down, he was using a lot of the broken language because he was using it for Blaster. I mean, yeah, for Blaster's benefit, because Blaster didn't understand a lot of things as well. Because if you note it, if you listen to him speak after he's actually Blaster's actually killed, he actually starts dropping the broken speech and starts speaking normally.
No, that's true. I don't think I noticed it right away, but I think I kind of did later on.
It's a part of Miller's subtle world building. I mean, as I said in the previous video, I actually think that Miller's world building is sort of like how Dark Souls does its world building. You kind of have to pick it up as you go through all these subtle cues and hints.
Yeah, it doesn't slam you right in the face with it. You know, it's not trying to be like Lord of the Rings or something. It's trying to be very much the opposite of that. Yeah. And I think that comes across a lot in almost every movie. Yeah. Like it totally gradually builds up to the shit that we are used to with Mad Max. You know, you look at Beyond Thunderdome, especially the last car scene, like that shit preps you for Fury Road for sure.
Oh yeah. So, what did y'all think of the Thunderdome fight?
It was weird. It's pretty strange. Put it politely.
Kind of reminded me of like space training.
Like American Gladiator shit.
Yeah.
If anybody's
They had
old
those
enough to remember
harnesses.
Like Hell in a Cell
it. Yeah.
with weapons.
I personally think that Thunderdome should be a normal part of life. You know, 2-minute interval memories. Fucking. I think in terms of that point in the series, definitely we needed to see Max do some shit. You know, the initial part of it is kind of watered down by the fact that they if you watch it, they don't really know what to do, like with those, you know, rubber bands or whatever that they're on. So there's just a point at the beginning of it where like Mel Gibson he's like flopping around like a fish. And that part always kind of bugs me out, but yeah, outside of that,
He picks it up though. He gets into flipping and doing all that stuff. Once he gets rolling, which they find, of course, the one weakness that he finds out when he activates the car alarm his blaster is weak to loud noises, and he happens to have his whistle that he has to help summon his monkey. I don't know what it is with people and pet monkeys back in those days, but
Haven't
it's
you
a
adopted a monkey?
There you go.
so so he actually was able to use that to his advantage to win, and finds out that, of course, Master is not necessarily this evil individual, but kind of an innocent, which draws upon Max's good side, which is something you also see in a lot of it, is that Max is considered this hardened, selfish wastelander, but he still has that core that makes him who he is.
He's still kind of a cop, like the good cop from when he was in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah, but
leads
then
him
he
into
does that
basically
like samurai
trouble.
movie shit where he helps people out, and then he just ends up either getting like left behind or just wandering off on his own. Yeah. He very much is like that wandering wasteland samurai. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if they had the funding behind it, I think they could have made it into a weekly CV series. And definitely I could see the comic book series running well, because that would have been, I mean, that fits for serial drama.
I read something that like the person who was slated to star in the series was injured or something like that, and that's why they scuttled
Yeah.
it. But yeah, it could have happened, but anyway, but yeah, the Thunderdome fight was interesting. But honestly, I was expecting more. I was thinking, I know it's called Beyond Thunderdome, so maybe that should have been a clue right there.
Yeah, right there.
But I just kind of feel like it was over really quickly. It was
What about
kind of a small part of the movie.
what about the spectacle they made of it, like the announcer doing the whole thing at the very beginning?
The announcer was interesting. He was interesting.
Oh, he's the best part of the movie, probably.
What did they call him? Was that was he
What was his name?
Was he Dr. Dealgood, or was he? I don't know.
What, the announcer?
Yeah.
One of the things that I maybe don't necessarily love about this movie is that it hits you with so many like crazy, like visually interesting characters so fast. I never really noticed anyone's name.
Well, you kind of want to follow each one of them, because you gotta wonder what each person's backstory is.
Yeah, a lot of them could get their own movie. It's like, oh wow, look at that guy in like the weird armor made out of car parts. Let's follow that guy around for a while. See what his day is like.
But of course, Max's main issue, and it took me a couple of viewings to really understand this, but Max, of course, screws up when he tells Auntie this wasn't a part of our deal, which breaks their deal because part of the deal was secrecy. And they end up killing Blaster, and of course Max has to pay the penalty, which, you break a deal, you face the wheel.
Yeah. So the guy that plays the announcer is Edwin Hodgman, and I've actually seen a couple of other Aussie films that he's been in. Hey, it's Esther Blueberger and Shot both featured him. That's interesting. But yeah. So yeah, he kind of fumbles that right there with the deal thing. It's like,
Yeah, he kind of screws up his part in that, which is kind of sad, really, if you think about it, because he was doing really well, and of course, again, if he hadn't shown his just general feeling of, well, he's innocent, I can't kill somebody who's innocent, he would have well, of course, it would have been a very short movie. You'd just killed the guy, gotten his stuff, and left. That would have probably been kind of a crappy movie at the end of the day. But they end up getting Gulag or whatever it is as a choice, which apparently ends up being him.
Gulag.
Well, that would be the Gulag Desert, wouldn't it? So
the basically put him backwards on a horse and hang water in front of it so that it will go in one direction, which happens to be out into the middle of nowhere.
yeah, kind of what they did to Paul Atreides in Dune after they killed Duke Leto Atreides. And then he somehow gets found by a young woman who is part of this Lost Boys kind of a thing.
They're just suddenly wild children in this movie.
Wild
Like,
children.
I had kind of a hard time following what the plot itself actually was, because it moves on real fast. It's like, now this is happening, now that's happening.
Yeah,
That's kind of the pacing that I felt with this.
because now they're in Neverland near Mermaid Lagoon.
And the fact that the two apparently oldest individuals, Savannah, who's played by Helen Boudet, and Slake, who's played by Tom Jennings, they're probably just about the right ages or just a bit older to really be stand-ins for Peter and Wendy. And so it really does give that vibe.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And they're probably, the fact they kind of end up on separate ends of the divide when it comes to stay or go, I think that kind of even just makes it further kind of showing Peter versus Wendy. Kind of, that was kind of my feeling there. But my biggest question that the whole movie revolved around this, though, is like, we hear the tell, we get that lovely tell from Savannah, but there's really no explanation for why a bunch of kids and young adults are gathered with no one else. They don't really explain that part of it. And I was just kind of, or unless I missed something. And I just thought that was kind of strange. But I don't know. Did anyone else get that answer? Brandon, was that listed in your outside sources?
Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Any case, all the children are left in the care of the older children by the
Right.
adults, who thought they were just going on including Captain Walker, who thought they were just going to go on a short journey back. They figured that they could go and then come back, and then ended up getting basically slaughtered instead.
Okay.
So they ended up being left on their own to care for their own. And
That
of course,
makes
they've
more
been doing
sense.
an okay job of propagating, because at least one of the teen girls is pregnant, as
Right.
you can see in there. But it's a very weird, feral Children of the Flies type deal, where they get that, as Mo was saying earlier about that worship thing going on,
Yeah.
with all the weird. I mean, as Max saying, stop the noise, as they go,
Right.
as they believe he has come back to fly them home, and because their understanding is kind of warped.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Savannah herself was only like one-ish during the initial flight out,
Right.
to escape the nuclear holocaust.
Mhm.
And which is why you can kind of date it, because she and the oldest were kind of just like right there at birth. So in there they're around 16, 17ish. So which is why they're around 15 years after. So they are so they have very little understanding as to the reality. Though it is kind of cool where you have that kind of mystical moment where he throws the hat in the air and everything just kind of, like the kite and stuff, just starts heading towards the crash zone of the plane. It's just kind of a cool,
Yeah,
weird
when he
moment.
throws that kite up, that's like a favorite.
And I
moment.
love how the children are against that backdrop of the plane. That silhouette of them aligning the back of the top of the plane and the wing. That right there is like a beautiful picture.
It does.
It's like it reminds me of the George Carlin sketch where he's saying, where they say, "Get on the plane, get on the plane." Heck with you, I'm getting in the plane. Lady Evil
Now,
Knievel, get on the plane.
one of my favorite stand-up routines is somebody actually kind of giving Carlin a bit of grief for that. It's like, you know what she means? Get on the plane.
Hmm.
Well, they definitely got on the plane.
Yes, they did. Granted, they would have had to do some excavating to do anything else, but And I was it the one dude who wore the face paint. I think was the one up on the tail, wasn't he? And I liked how that character was named Screw Loose. That was a fairly appropriate.
Well, he was a weird one because he actually would sneak across the desert to Bartertown, because you see him actually in the pig area.
Yeah.
So he's actually been sneaking across the desert most of this time anyway, but he doesn't speak, so therefore.
And he reminded me visually of the Half-Life war kids. There was a lot of similarity there,
Yes,
and I wonder if that was.
They took that theme and fucking definitely expanded it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last movie.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't have a Bugs Bunny doll to tell them how to do.
Oh, yeah. That's a shame.
Right. Yeah. Once you get him in front of a judge, he's like, "The bunny made me do it."
Wonder how much Warner Brothers contributed to the budget to allow that.
Well,
Right.
at least it's not the bunny in the movie that you had me watch, Dave.
Oh, come on. That was
I
hilarious.
don't think I really want to know.
Yeah.
Buddy the Killer Thing.
But basically, Max, for some reason, doesn't fly them home. I don't know why. And when they realize that reality is slightly different than their perception, then again, a rift forms between the two factions. Those who are more of a realist, and they kind of stick with Max, saying, "Well, why are we moving? We've got something that nobody else has. We got water, we got plant life, we got perfection right here."
Mm-hmm.
And the others saying, "No, he's not going to lead us out. We're going to find our way on our own. We're going to go back to Tomorrowland or Sydney."
Right.
Yeah, basically, we're just gonna bounce to like a civilization again or something.
Right.
They think.
They think.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they managed to do it, even though Max has basically worked towards making sure they didn't, including hog tying them, but they got out of that.
Yep.
And that's that stupid kid portion of the movie, But without it, they probably would never have moved the plot forward, because when Max has to go after him, it moves the plot along.
I do like how he ended up punching her. That was different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he managed to luck out on an ancient gun somehow working the right way for him. But it was a cool scene. I mean, he basically, I think Max actually really did a good job of looking like the tough character throughout most of the movie. Except
Yes.
for that beginning part where he kind of fumbled around at the Thunderdome. But, otherwise, he was pretty damn impressive throughout the whole.
Yeah.
But they realize after the desert, and they have these sinkholes in the desert that just swallow you up. After they realize, oh crap, we probably shouldn't have wandered out on our own after all.
Yeah.
After one of them dies, they have to go to Bartertown, which is one of the closest places, in order to spring Master because he would be able to be their best shot at getting home again.
Master's like
Which-
an engineer, like knows how to fix the
Mhm.
plane or something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
So when the police come and take us all away, they manage to actually have a scene where they spring Master with even a harken back to Star Wars, if I remember correctly, where the guy comes in and runs, and Max chases after him, and then turns around and runs the other way as they all come after him. But what did y'all think of the whole scene where they kind of come back to Bartertown from the desert and wreak havoc, I guess?
Well, it was kind of a lesson learned in a sense because none of these children knew the dangers of the world. They were from a world where it was kind of lived in the bubble. So anything that they did after, it was kind of like lessons being learned. You know what I mean?
Except for Screwloose, who apparently had been to Bartertown many times before.
Well, that's why you don't have any screws loose. But in any case, anyone else?
Now, could anyone actually blame Auntie for wanting to come after them after doing that? I mean, basically, they went in, they wrecked the place, and destroyed their entire infrastructure below the city when they took that train and headed out.
Dustin, what do you think about that? The scenes.
What about their whole jailbreak thing? Yeah, I thought it was a cool scene. So like they sneak in. They're like sneaking in through vents and stuff. So guys, I'm not still sick, but my brain is kind of not all here. But no, it was a good it was just a good break-in scene. So I kind of like when I seem to recall like they pull somebody through like a water pipe. Like one of the guards is like, "Hey," and they just like yank him through that thing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
I also liked how they had the one guy wearing the football gear comes up to the pipe and Max just punches him out in the face.
That's exactly what I was trying to describe.
But when they take that train, they just blow the whole thing up, and you can see explosions all up in Bartertown. Which of course, Auntie isn't sitting well with that. Which I can't really blame her in all aspects.
No.
It's not per se an evil act. It's more of a you screwed with our stuff. We're
Don't take my stuff.
Yeah.
Don't take my master.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically trashed their stuff. I mean, and their town.
And she goes out to the town and says, "We must take back our master."
Yep.
The way she words it, it's like,
We will rebuild.
Right.
She was like really into that. So then you come the really crazy chase scene with them on the train fighting off all the people in the vehicles, which of course they then go way overboard and repeat again when you get to Fury Road. I mean, the stuff in the previous movies I really feel like Thunderdome really built on that more than anything else, and then Fury Road just expanded that.
And then, of course, this is the sequence where we see the cow car.
Oh yeah, cow car is the best car.
Where Max gets to drive.
And one of the major generals that they had is that guy who has the creepy, like, mannequin head on a stick.
Yeah.
And,
call him
just like punk that guy. I remember that.
I think they call him like Tun Tattoo or some such thing. And he keeps... That dude had so much crap thrown at him. I felt like there were at least 3 times he should have been dead.
I remember when they threw him in the pig crap, and I thought it was so gross when he came out and like some of it got in his mouth.
And I was thinking in that chase scene, I was like, damn, he washed that crap off fast.
But then he got thrown off of a bridge. He somehow managed to come back from that. But in his final scene, it's great because in the very final scene where he dies, he gives the finger before he dies.
Yeah, I love that part where he's just about to die, and then the hand comes up with the middle finger.
But I really think that this scene where the vehicular combat is where this film shines in the action department, because it really pulled out all the stops for this scenes. You had just all things going crazy throughout it. Again, not as crazy as Fury Road, but they didn't have that kind of budget. So, still, it was a pretty darn.
I would almost pair this movie like next to Goonies, kind of.
It was the same year, wasn't
it? 86, right? I think
so.
Goonies is 86, right? Or is it 85?
No, actually, 85, and so is this one. So, yeah, they are the same year.
I kept on thinking like Goonies kind of a vibe, too, with this film. So to me, having them both come out the same year, that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have any comments on the vehicular combat scene?
Well, I do like the fact that both in this one and in Fury Road, they use different things with trains. Like this one, we've got the vehicle on the train tracks. Whereas the tanker that they had with all the gas or whatnot, that had a train piece on the front of it. It was kind of unique design.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if people can follow my viewpoint on that.
Yeah, I thought it was just in general. I thought it was pretty darn cool. It really without vehicular combat, Mad Max is just a regular action film. But really, that's what makes a Mad Max film is that vehicle stuff, because it's what the action, the main part of the action in Road Warrior and in the original Mad Max was all about the vehicles.
Which makes it quite amusing that Max is mistaken for Captain Walker.
Yeah, a pilot. Yeah.
Which is interesting that you mentioned the vehicles, because that's kind of why I think that the Death Race series, especially the one with Jason Statham and so on and so forth, those vehicles that are used there are very similar to some of the ones that were used in Mad Max. So it's like
Yeah.
worlds built other worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to go when they get to the end of the track. Of course, they're about to get robbed again by the kid of the pilot. But I love the way he says it. It's like, move and you're dead meat. And then he sees the all of the people coming up behind him. Like, oh, I think we're all dead meat. He runs.
It's like, nope.
Fuck this shit. Let's get out of here.
But that
Mhm.
scene where he goes in and he goes to the front of the vehicle and then disappears, I always thought that was cool, but that's just because I love the secret passages and stuff that they have in there. Where he's able to climb down that to the cave where they've been hiding out. And of course, our pilot friend gets a quite a rude awakening, realizing that, oh, here's the guy I robbed.
Oh yeah.
You.
And he ends up getting roped into actually helping Max out
Mm-hmm.
by giving them a plane ride out of there.
Mhm.
And now, you guys might be able to point this out to me because I wasn't certain. The vehicle that Max ends up utilizing to clear the runway in order to take off, is that his original vehicle that was restored? Because it kind of reminded me of that vehicle that he was running in prior to the hull.
Yeah, it did kind of remind me a little bit about it. It may have been like the body of it or something like that. They might have built upon it.
Because, I mean, Master Blaster, they repaired his vehicle.
Yeah.
So they got it to where it was running. And, but of course, Master lost it when Blaster was killed. So it very well could have been his vehicle. It looked like what he had because he was in this Jeep that kind of had it chained out like a wagon train.
Right.
But it was just kind of cool to see him if it was his original vehicle because we so rarely get to see Max keep his vehicles throughout these movies.
Right.
And he had to clear the way and sacrifice himself so that everyone else could live.
Mm-hmm.
And then they
of
just
course
let him
we-
go, which was kind of unexpected.
Right.
Mm.
Well, it speaks
Actually-
to the personality of the main villain.
Yeah, it's almost like okay, you have been a royal pain in the ass, and I am not happy with you, but you can got some skills. I respect that. Okay.
I
Yeah.
think she was amused at the end of it all. I mean, like I said, she said, like, ain't we a pair, Raggedy Man? Because
Yeah.
I think she was amused by the fact that he was left behind by the whole group.
Right.
And he was just there.
Right.
So they just let
Get
him
the
go.
feeling he won't be welcome back in Bartertown, but
Yeah, so he just back to wander in the wasteland again.
right.
Oh yeah.
Which, and of course, the others managed to find their way back to the decimated and probably still irradiated Sydney.
Yeah.
And they decide we're going to set up our own civilization here. And you cut to the end where they're retelling the story with Savannah having her own child in the future as they wait for their brethren and for Max's inevitable return.
Well, yeah, because only like a part of them are in that factory at the very end.
Oh yeah.
You know, because they'd left some of them behind with what's his name?
Yeah. That one.
Yeah.
So what did y'all think about the end? I mean, that's a typical samurai / cowboy wandering tale at the end, isn't it? Where they just they leave him
Yeah.
out there, so he's wandering the wasteland until he runs into his next adventure.
Until he
That's
runs
pretty
into
much where we find him in Fury Road,
Yeah.
looking totally different for some reason.
Well, I mean, that's because Mel
No idea
Gibson went
why.
crazy.
I
Oh,
wouldn't say totally
kind of
different.
nuts. Yeah.
If you watch them back to back, it's interesting that Tom Hardy does have some similarities. It's not like
Yeah,
they could have gone very different.
he
Well,
plays a
Like
good
if they
Max.
shaved Mel Gibson like all the
Right.
way, you'd get Tom Hardy.
Not
But
necessarily.
like I said, the original concept of Fury Road was an older Max taking place 30 years after that, where he's
Oh.
mostly feral himself. And by discovering love and relationship with Furiosa, he ends up regaining some of his humanity and eventually decides to try and rejoin civilization. So,
And also
very different
making a light
tale.
with Furiosa, which was the original ending.
But that would have probably been, though a very different tale, it probably would have been the exact same movie otherwise, just with a slightly different beginning and a slightly different ending and different actors. And that would have been basically it, because otherwise it would pretty much be the same. Because they had that movie like planned from the start. So,
Yeah,
uh,
for the most part. It's just
but
certain things tripped it up.
I mean, I like the ending on this. Like, it feels like a good bookend to that original trilogy.
so what did y'all think about the special effects in this particular? All
This
the
movie had-
costume design and
This movie had pretty good effects. So I had to catch myself there. I saw Salem's Lot earlier today, and I was gonna say, you know, the worst effect was that crushed dog in the cemetery. Oh wait, that was Salem's Lot.
it's
Well
got some
done.
amazing practical effects in this. I mean,
Not to mention
Yeah.
set and costume design too. Like, it's so unique. Like, it's been parodied so much as just when people think apocalypse, like they see the aesthetics from this movie,
Pretty much.
and they parodied it in Rick and Morty a while ago too. They had a whole Mad Max episode.
Eh,
well,
Yeah,
Mad Max
it's
is
like
just
with-
a staple of our culture.
Which is
Well, it's
ironic
like-
because it's Australian.
This is true.
Jake,
Well, I was
You were
going to say,
saying-
as we've said in the other discussion, the use of practical effects and a really impressive stunt work and what have you in these films is very impressive, and I do agree with the ones that, like, if you're going to use CG and other visual effects, you got to do it in a way that's good. That ages well, or it just doesn't. And a lot of the visual effects from this time period were pretty off. So I think it's good that they didn't have as much of that in this film. That there was more just practical for the most part, and given that, it was good effects, no doubt about it. Yeah.
well, that's the cool thing of it. If anyone else have anything else on the effects before we move on?
I enjoyed the effects in all three of the original trilogy, and I guess I would have to say the Fury Road one as well. I mean, the car chases, the set design, the costumes. It's just a lot to take in, you know. I mean,
Well, and one thing I think we still didn't even talk about really specifically was the cinematography for all of these. They put the camera right in the action quite a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That was impressive too, and both because of the effect it gives you as the viewer, but just the process of doing that again, took some skill and some creativity to pull that off. So,
Cool. I feel like the film was very well made.
mhm.
It's a good movie. This is like
Of
some
course.
people's favorite movie of all time.
And there
I
are
can't
others
say
that
favorite,
loathe its
but-
existence.
But it is my favorite
Oh,
Mad
it's not
Max
bad.
film.
I would have
But
to say that this is my favorite Mad Max film per se. But as far as visuals go, Fury Road actually does a lot.
Mhm.
well, they had a lot
It's
more
not-
money to work with.
Well, and better technology and all that stuff. But
Oh
yeah.
it's. I think if you were to take if you were to say quantifying it for the time, this one did pretty damn good for what
Yeah,
it
Yeah.
had and where
I
it
agree.
was.
Yeah.
So speaking of, to me, of course, the part that puts us into the reason for the movie itself, which is music, and to me, I actually consider this score the best of all the Mad Max films. Of course, we talked about the first two kind of being just kind of accentuating what was going on with Fury Road really being the only one that stood out as anything. But I really feel like the music in this film was a character in and of itself. The
Mhm.
scores were quite intricate. I've listened to them over and over again a lot, and just hearing it again, you can tell that they really worked. I mean, like I say, it was on a different level to me. But
And this one had music by Maurice Jarre, who actually has done some pretty impressive stuff over the years.
and there was a big orchestral score going on in this.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to Mo?
Let's see. I think he fell
left.
asleep. I heard snoring.
I
I don't know.
So it's like, he hasn't talked for a while. Right?
He probably
yeah,
fell
the
out
composer-
after all that Mad Max stuff.
So the composer of this score won Oscars for A Passage to India, Dr. Zhivago, and Lawrence of Arabia, and also did films like Ghost and
noticed.
Witness. Yeah, there's some good stuff there on the resume.
And that was not the original Dr. Zhivago. That was a remake of the series or whatever.
The David Lean one,
Yeah.
which was what do you mean not the original one? What are you thinking of?
Well, I'm thinking of the original Dr. Zhivago. Let's see, Doctor from 1965 with Omar.
Yeah. That's the one that Maurice Jarre won the Oscar for. Yes.
Well, there was another one that was done in the 2000s that I think was underneath that guy. So,
I don't see a listing for it here.
see, from 2002. Let's see. Oh well, it doesn't matter to me.
I also
All
really
right.
like the Tina Turner songs that we had. I
Right.
mean, some of those were iconic, like the Beyond Thunderdome, of course, the one at the beginning that Dave was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's just to me, it's just iconic soundtrack wise. I mean, does anybody feel like the soundtrack? Does anybody disagree? Like a soundtrack didn't? They feel like it didn't have any power to it, or?
No, it was a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
There were a lot more ballads than I would have expected, but Tina Turner. I guess that's why.
Well, it's definitely a more balanced assortment of scores. It wasn't all just pumping action like the first couple films mostly were. There were some softer pieces to the score, and yeah.
I mean, just hearing that whole that saxophone where it's just going for the Bartertown thing, like that da 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 da. It just I don't know. It's one of those few soundtracks, and I don't have a lot of them, that I could listen to on its own, and I have listened to on its own many times.
Hmm.
But again, to me, I've got the lens of nostalgia clouding my mind.
Mhm.
So it's very possible that it's a terrible soundtrack, and I'm just, you know, loving it because of its just impact on my childhood.
I'd say it's a good one. I would stop short of iconic because that I don't have nearly that level of attachment to it that you do. But it definitely is a very well done score. The songs are memorable and pretty cool. Um, they're Tina Turner does have a great voice, and definitely the songs complemented it well. And yeah. Mm.
I don't have as much tie to this film, to these films, as much as most people. Maybe because I always considered them like action movies. It's not that I didn't like them or didn't want to watch them in their entirety. I just never sat down and watched them back to back like this, and I'm glad that I did.
Mm-hmm.
Because it gave me a little bit more of appreciation for what Mad Max was and is to the film community. But I'm pleased with what I've seen. It's just there are some things that don't behold me to it,
Mm-hmm.
as,
Right.
as much as it would for some other people. Granted, it set the stonework for many apocalyptic movies to come. So I have respect for that, at least.
True. I don't think. Did we mention that many consider Mad Max the first post-apocalyptic
Post-apocalyptic.
film? Yeah. So that's
Which
worth
is
mentioning.
I don't know. I consider the Ten Commandments the first post-apocalyptic. But anyways,
and I agree with Mo when he had said originally that this one, I mean, the original Mad Max, A Boy and His Dog, different ones would definitely have kicked off that. And it seemed like it was just a post-apocalyptic craze of the 80s and early 90s. You you got most of the most major post-apocalyptic films happening between the late 70s and early 90s, ending with the, of course, Terminator series. So it's just an interesting thing. I mean, would you have Terminator even without Mad Max to originally back it up?
that'll be an interesting theory.
Yeah. I
So
believe.
with that,
hasn't Cameron cited Mad Max as an influence?
I felt like there was one.
Yeah.
I know he's seen it because I know he has talked about it in the past. So, of course, Cameron has done the Piranha 2: The Spawning, which is his greatest work.
Hey, I like that movie.
It laid the framework for all sorts of films.
It's a cool movie.
I like it too.
So, with that being said, we'll wrap up with favorite scenes. Jake, what is your favorite scene?
My favorite scene in this one? It's kind of hard to say, but maybe that scene with that dude trying to disarm the car. I mean, that really was amusing to me. The scene where Max is offloading all his weapons, that really amused me. Driving the cow car. Those all probably would be ones that amused me a lot. And I did like the telling of the tale. I thought that was a very interesting thing that they did there. So I'm not sure I have a single favorite, but those were all pretty fun bits.
Okay. I guess one of my favorites is the ending where Tina Turner says, "We are a pair, aren't we, Mr. Raggedy Man?" And also I get a kick out of the fight scenes in the Thunderdome. And I guess I get a kick out of Screw Loose.
Dustin?
So it's more of a smaller moment, but near the end, when they're running through like the pilot's bunker or whatever that thing is, and his kid's trying to wake him up, it's like, they're coming, we gotta go, get the plane ready. And he's like, what? What's going on? And all of a sudden, like Max and like all these kids are like in his room, and Max is like, you. He's like, wait, what? I laughed kind of hard at that.
This he had a comfortable little cave up there.
Yeah, they had a lot of supplies and all kinds of stuff. He was
just sitting in bed reading. It was just kind of nice. My favorite, of course, is I just love the announcer part where he starts telling the history of Thunderdome and all that. I remember as a child when HBO was running the film for the first time, they actually played the clip where he's saying, "The man with no name," as the introduction to Max. And it was just a really just cool, epic introduction to the big fight that was going on. It kind of ramped you up for the potential slaughter to come.
Yeah, to me, when he said the man with no name, that to me was like a total disrespect to him, because then now the people on the outside don't really know who he is, if he dies.
Well, as he goes, he rarely introduces himself to anybody else. He doesn't want people to know who he is. But with that being said, any final thoughts before we go into our breakdown?
Well, even though I didn't really have a whole lot to say on this one, it's still a pretty awesome movie, and I'm happy I revisited it. I think I should probably do so again when maybe we're in a better state of mind. Because, current events have been pretty rough on everybody, but, we're going to keep broadcasting and being on the air for as long as this goes. So, buckle in, gang.
We're going to outlive the
so many movies to watch.
Hey, actually, now more than ever, it's a good time to watch movies.
Yeah, right. Invisible Man on VOD Friday.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, that movie about the hunt, that one looks interesting.
Oh, yeah, that too. Well, the hunt's supposed to be pretty awesome. I'm more excited about this Invisible Man, but, yeah.
Oh, why don't we actually have you lead us off, Dustin? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a horror collector here in Milwaukee while I go to school. Although, not sure what's going on with that now. Everything got canceled. And we have several extra weeks of spring break. Anyway, so I have a YouTube channel called The Crypt of Horrors where I show off the wide variety of stuff that I pick up in the before time, the long, long ago. And I also do reviews occasionally on that channel, so you can find it here on YouTube at The Crypt of Horrors. I also have an Instagram for my collection, The Crypt of Horrors. And my Twitter is sort of in limbo, but a fan did make an account for me. What did he call it? Der Cryptaxis, which I guess Cryptaxis is going to become my name. So it's kind of a call to like German movie posters like Der Blob instead of The Blob. Apparently some other jerk like claimed Cryptaxis. Like, what the it's annoying. real annoying. But anyway, yeah, we're not dead yet.
So, Jake, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I'm Cody Bookie Jake. I'm a movie, television, anime, what have you, collector here in Central Virginia. I am also I am part of the channel Septum Sin versus the World, where we, in the last couple weeks, have put out two pretty big videos that are a lot of fun. One where we discuss the films of 2019, and one where we started our analysis / tribute to NIS America, wonderful anime company or anime branch of game software company that mysteriously has stopped putting out new releases, but we love what we have already. In the meantime, I am also going to be watching a lot more of that because being momentarily sequestered at home for the who knows how long future. And definitely hoping for a quick and positive resolution to this whole thing. But definitely looking forward to some viewing and reading in the meantime, and hopefully writing as well.
Well, maybe now you can do some nature stuff.
Well, limitedly, yes, but I'm probably not even going to be outside much for the next few days. So, yeah.
All righty. And my name is David. Oh, go ahead, Septum.
I was gonna, before I give you back your channel here. But first off, Mo was out, so of course, go with Drunken Master Studios and his channel, so you can check out a lot of his cool stuff. He does a lot of reviews and retrospectives, so you should definitely check it out, especially his Lone Wolf and Cub series that he is doing right now, which is quite cool. I'm sure he would want that plugged if he was still with us right now. Of course, I'm Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. We cover the physical media and the love of physical media. But that's not all. Of course, Jake has covered most of what we were going to cover anyway. But we also work with Inside Movies Galore, where I help run the scheduling. And because of that, next week's movie is going to be the, both versions of Little Shop of Horrors. If you want to go with the pre-show, there will be the original Little Shop of Horrors, which has Jack Nicholson involved in one of his early roles. Of course, the main event will be Little Shop of Horrors, the musical, with Rick Moranis and all the fun crew therein. So definitely you want to stay tuned for that lovely event. We also have a theme for the month of April, which is going to be Ancient April, which will be a lot of prehistoric fun, where we look at dinosaurs, cavemen, and all sorts of prehistoric hysteria.
Potentially invading modern day.
So definitely check us out, and we will see you at that time. And I will hand this back to Dave to have us lead out.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Strege, and I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, but I run it with most of you guys, and I appreciate it very much going on this journey of films with me. It's kind of like my therapy, and I think it's become kind of your guys' therapy too. And
certainly,
I certainly enjoy the avenues and the places that we've gone. Like while the coronavirus is going on, we are talking about Mad Max films, people. I mean that's crazy. I know it's crazy, but we like it. So, but I also moonlight at my own channel from time to time. Lately, I haven't because I've been sick. But I call it Delusions of Grandeur, and I do my own video pickup and my own video reviews on film. So definitely check some of that out. I have quite a few things out there for you to view, regardless. But I plan on starting that up shortly once I get the rest of my bins back in my room and my room back in order, and voila, it will be written, it will be done. So hopefully you have enjoyed our Mad Max journey. It was a long journey, but we have finally ended it. And we revisit it in the future. You never know. So, but thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. And definitely think of how you would interpret these films. And let us know down in the comments what you may have thought of them while you were watching them. I, for one, look at them a little differently now that I've seen them back to back and in their entirety. What about you? In any case, enjoy your evening and stay safe.
All right.